Well, Amy Looper, thank you so much for joining me today on the Journey of Ruth podcast.
Thanks, Courtney. It's good to be here.
Yes. We connected at an event that a friend of ours put on, and we started talking about kind of what we do, and we were like, yes, we got to get together. We got to have this conversation. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a coach. I came from many years in corporate America, mom of two, and now an entrepreneur, really on a mission to help working moms overcome burnout and overcome the chronic stress cycle. And it's just been such a fun journey. And so I'm glad that we were able to come together today to really help others try to figure out this thing called working parenthood and making it easier. I think we get to elevate the experience of it. It doesn't have to be so exhausting.
Because that is what you think of. You know, you maybe don't realize how exhausting it's going to be when you venture in at first. And then anyone who's been a mom for more than, I don't know, an hour is going, right? It is exhausting. How am I going to do this and everything else? The mental load is so big. So I'm excited to kind of chat into this. Now, your story, like you said, your story began in the corporate world. What brought you out of that world and into the coaching and the consulting profession?
I love this question because the answer is pretty fun. Burnout. And I had prayed to get let go of my corporate job with a particular, boss that I had been working for. And it was a blessing. It was really like, get me out of this. I am so done with this cycle of trying to, and the cycle was trying to be that high performer, trying to really be, I was in sales, I was in software sales, trying to accomplish and always do the next thing, when a lot of things in my personal life were kind of not going so well. We had some family trauma that had happened early on when I had kids, in between both births of my kids, in addition to, like, I had postpartum depression and then the family stuff just kind of came in between a lot of things in our own immediate family. And so it was just a really heavy time. And so by 2020, like right before the pandemic, I was to a place where I was like, oh, I don't know what this is. I just am like, I can't go anymore. Doesn't matter about all the amazing money. It doesn't matter about the title. It doesn't matter about all the things that as high achievers really sometimes place a lot of value on and start to identify with. All of that, I was ready to give up. I was like, I need to get better. Like internally, I need to heal. And so then I went on this healing path.
Wow. And that's a lot to kind of process, I think, for us, because, I mean, those of you that are out there and you're listening and you're achievers as well, like me and like Amy, you're like, oh, I can never do that because of this reason or whatever. And even if you're not an achiever, our culture certainly tells us that, like, hey, it's not about you, and like you need to kind of set yourself aside and go and work. And then after work is over, then you can go and take care of yourself. And you were kind of saying, like, there wasn't an option. There were some things that you needed to work out in yourself that were affecting what you were doing at work. Would you say that was true?
Completely. Yeah, completely. Like, I think for a lot of years, avoidance and putting on the smile of everything's okay, right? A lot of times as moms, we get into this pattern where we put on the look or the smile or the whatever to make it look like a mask. Everything is okay, when internally things are not okay. Yeah. And you feel unsettled, and it may come out in different ways. For me, it was the chronic anxiety. It was like, when my coworkers started to really sense, like, you're not, like, you're awesome, like, you're doing amazing things here, but the way that you're showing up and being isn't always awesome. And when I got to realize that and see that in the mirror, it was like, oh man, yeah, I'm really letting these emotions drive me. And so I realized, okay, I've got to figure out how to manage emotions better and how to get rid of some of that anger and things that I had from previous things that had happened in my life, to just like let go and forgive and all the things, to be able to move forward in a different way of being.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you mentioned that part of that struggle was postpartum depression. And that is
Mm-hmm.
such a common struggle for so many moms. And I'm happy to say that I feel like it's no longer taboo to talk, to like bring it up or like admit that you have it. I feel like it was a lot like PTSD. There was
Yeah,
a time, you know, when you talk to World War II vets, you just didn't talk about it. You were just
right.
quiet about the internal struggle that you were going on, that was going on inside. And it was seen almost as weakness for
Yeah.
those men coming home. Now we know that it's a real thing. And I think it's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing with postpartum depression. It is a real thing. I didn't know that I kind of struggled with it with my first son until my husband, until I actually came out of it. And my husband was like, I was almost to the place where I was concerned. And then I kind of
Right.
reached a point of healing for me personally, you know, and he was like, now I can see that you really were struggling with it because now I'm seeing you on the other side.
Right.
Since that's such a big deal and you work with moms all the time, you work with companies, can you talk about postpartum depression, what that looks like
Yeah.
in the workplace when it's not like you can't stay home
Yeah.
and stay in bed all day? That's not an option. So what
Yeah.
are your
Yeah.
suggestions to moms in that case?
Yeah. Well, so two things. So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
And I do this whole maternal mental health training for corporations to really help leaders that maybe haven't gone through it or maybe are not a woman, like really understand what the signs are. And so in a nutshell,
Which I love
there's two
that, by the
things.
way, because you're training the leaders of these
Yeah.
businesses to say, like, your women are going to have babies. They are going to go through this. Here's
Yeah.
how you can better serve your employees. I love that.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
How you can better relate to them. If we're going to be a diverse and inclusive type of, if you're going to have that type of work culture,
Mm-hmm.
then you've got to really understand, right?
That's
So,
right.
so in a nutshell, there's baby blues and there's postpartum, right? Baby
Mm.
blues is like if you're getting those symptoms of really highs and lows, maybe hormonal shifts, maybe your emotions are just feeling like they're on a roller coaster, happy one minute, sad the next, angry, irritable, whatever it is, that that happens in the first month. And if it starts to dissipate by week 3, then that's probably baby blues. That's very common. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
very common.
Mm-hmm.
What isn't so common, and there's a lot of misconceptions around postpartum depression, what isn't so common is postpartum depression. It only happens like 1 in 5 women, but it can
Wow.
happen in 1 in 10 men as well. And so
Hmm.
know that just because you're a spouse, you're a dad, that you can't get it. You can, especially if your wife maybe is going through it. So postpartum depression happens for a longer term,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of signs of depression with that, right? Feelings of hopelessness, feelings of despair, feelings of I'm never, why did I have this baby? I'm never going to make it through. There may be episodes where you feel really super irritable and you may feel like, oh my gosh, I just can't take this anymore. And you may, not always, but you may have thoughts of hurting other people, hurting, even your own child. Like you may
Mm-hmm.
have those
Yeah.
and you may not.
Hmm.
And so the biggest thing I want the listeners to understand is postpartum depression is not always what you see in the news. The news takes these very, very rare cases where mom's jumping off of a building, 22-story building, to try to, hurt herself or her baby. And they blow that up, right, in the
Mm-hmm.
media. That is not always the case in postpartum depression. It could be as simple as, I shouldn't say simple, as common as the mom in the grocery store that maybe just had her baby 2 weeks ago, and she's pushing her baby, and looking fabulous. And like, you're like, wow, how did she bounce back so quickly? Sometimes postpartum anxiety can really be masked by perfectionism and by
Mm.
a mom trying to go over and beyond to look the part, but internally, she is always wondering about the what ifs. She's ruminating on those ideas of what if this happens? What if that happens? Are people looking at me? Are people judging me? all of those kind of thoughts that can be
Mm.
so overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you recently had a baby and you're feeling some of those things and it's lasting longer than a few weeks, definitely go into your doctor,
Mm.
talk with them. Don't be afraid. Like, we don't have to be afraid. And the
Yeah.
biggest problem is that 65% of women that actually have postpartum depression never get it diagnosed
Mm.
because
Is
they're
that just
afraid of
because
judgment.
I was gonna say that because they aren't really sure, or is it because they're so busy they can't get into? They don't feel like they have the time to go to the doctor for themselves because they have to go to the doctor for their kid like every 2 weeks. You know.
Yeah. Well, and again, that comes down to choice and
Mm.
self-worth, you know?
Mm.
And so I think it's really more of a mental health stigma of like,
Okay.
oh, someone's going to judge me. Someone's going to think I'm crazy. Someone's going to take away my baby. I remember thinking about that. I had an episode of like very minor, like a hallucination or a psychosis that happened after
Mm.
many weeks of extreme sleep deprivation due to some issues with my firstborn.
Yeah.
And and yeah, I just remember thinking someone was going to come in and steal my baby out of my living room. And everyone, including my au pair that was living with us and my spouse, was like, you need to take a break, you know, and I'm so glad that they were there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a big eye opener of like, oh yeah, I'm really not okay. Like, I really need to go get some consistent sleep. So sometimes
Mm.
it's not that you have any kind of mental disorders, like that you're super exhausted, you
Yeah.
know?
Okay, so we have momming is a hard job, right? Like being a
Right.
mom is a hard job, just in itself. And but I want to specifically talk to working moms, and I know some working moms, and in some ways they feel like they're not seen. They feel like
Yeah.
some of the motherhood advice is like, that's great, but I'm also working 40, 50 hours a week, and I don't. Some of that advice doesn't work for me. So can we talk
Yeah.
specifically about working moms? What are some struggles that working
Mhm.
moms specifically experience?
The biggest struggle, I think, and this is from experience as well, is constant overstimulation,
Mm,
right? You don't get a break ever. You
mm,
know, a stay-at-home mom with a baby, they don't get a break either. But I think also just putting the career on top of it, you've got multiple parties and people that you're reporting into and serving. And you're trying to serve, you know, not only your kids, your spouse, your boss, your team, if you're leading a team, like whatever that looks like, right? And so I think you're always context shifting. And when you think about it, like even just from a science
mm,
perspective, right, and how our brains are wired, like you have to context shift constantly. Well, that drains you emotionally, that drains you physically, and if you're not taking the spiritual breaks, it can drain you that way too. But you know, so it's really important to stay on top of that. The other thing is, I think, um competing agendas, right? You want to
yeah,
be there
yeah,
for your kids all the time, and then you want to be there for your career because you're ambitious and you're driven and you want the career. And so you're always doing this thing, right, of like,
hmm,
well, this competes with that, and you know, you're always feeling that struggle.
yeah, and
Would
probably
you agree?
also guilt, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're over here working on this thing, then this thing isn't getting done. You know, if you're working on something motherhood, then something in your work is sitting undone. If you're working on work, then something you feel like, then the mom guilt comes in of like, I'm not with my kid, or, you know,
Yeah.
whatever. And so it's that, I loved that word, context shifting. I've never heard that. And that makes a lot of sense. But I think also your brain never fully switches to one or the other. And
Right.
so it's really hard to feel like if you're participating in one of your worlds, that the other one
Yeah.
isn't, you know, getting the shaft in some way.
That's why it's so important to do leadership development and emotional
Mm-hmm.
intelligence work when becoming a parent. And this is the you know, I'm on a mission to help corporations really get this out there more, because that's what prepares you for parenting. Yes, lactation, you know, classes and birthing classes are all amazing too. But the thing that people are not teaching is that part. It's the emotional intelligence piece where you can become, I teach people how to become a shift master in their
Mm,
emotions between mommy needs to, you know, Mrs. I need you, right?
yeah.
Either at the workplace or whatever. To be able to do that with grace and with the ability to just shift like that and turn on and off responses that we need to be able to serve the different audiences that we serve as working
Yeah.
moms. And with that, we start to level out our emotional experience instead of doing this all day, which is flipping exhausting, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's
Yep.
very exhausting.
Hmm.
To making it an easier way, and life becomes easier, and then we start to enjoy it, and it's like, oh, I can do this. I can do the next level. I can get to the next level. And I don't have to sacrifice my career, my income, my family, like whatever your vision is as a mom, you don't have to sacrifice it when you start managing the way of your being.
Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. What do they call it? The fourth trimester?
Yeah.
I think is what they say, and
Yeah.
realizing that there's some training that needs to go into that. Now, if
Mm-hmm.
someone is an owner of a business or they are working alongside a new mom, you go into these workplaces and train leaders to help young moms. How can we serve a young mom best as either a business owner or as a coworker?
Yeah, I think so. If you're leading working parents, and this goes for either gender, right? Male or
Hmm.
female, if any working parent, and what I love now is that we see more paternity leave and dads actually taking it
Yes.
as a benefit. That's huge. And so what it really means is planning ahead of time, like creating and fostering this culture that is open, that is trustworthy, that your employees feel like they can come to you even if they're feeling off, and there's no
Mm.
judgment around anything, whether it be
Yeah.
I need to go take a day off because my kid is sick, or um, I'm pregnant, and they're not actually afraid to tell you that.
Yeah.
That comes down to culture.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a big deal because in the past that's been, oh, that's the beginning of the end basically. So you hide it
Yeah.
until you can't. Yeah, that
Yes.
makes a lot of sense. I love
Yep.
that that desire almost to be open and honest about what you're going through, because I'm sure if your employees feel safe in talking about what's going on in their life, then you're going to have like a much better work culture. You're going to attract
Yeah.
better, healthier employees, and you're going to maybe even have better retention, would you say?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
You're going to reduce, attrition rates. Employee performance is going to go up, right?
Yeah.
Because what do humans want? Psychological safety and belonging. It's
Mm,
that simple. That's what
okay.
we're always looking for, right? And
Hmm.
so if your employees feel that and they have that sense, and it's congruent within all team members, if it's congruent throughout the whole culture, then you're just going to boost morale and employee performance overall.
Yeah. Now, in a previous conversation that you and I had, you mentioned that surrender played a big role in your healing and your learning to avoid burnout. And any listeners know that surrender is like my least favorite word, so much so that I did a couple of episodes on it because I had to learn the same thing. I had to learn that surrender is not a bad word. It's actually it's good, and God took me through a whole season of it just so that I would learn that it's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Oh yeah.
So how did surrender like come into play in your healing process?
It's funny that you say that. Surrender is, yeah, I think it's such a blessing. Like it is the
Mm,
best gift I have ever been given. And but it took me a little bit to get there. I think
mm-hmm.
as if you're a certain personality type, if you're kind of a high performer, maybe you're a little type A. I'm a little type A.
Me
Like
too.
that's
Maybe
my
this is why
husband.
we have this in common. We're both like achievers, type A,
It's
extrovert type.
that controller personality. If you look at the personality quadrants, like if you're results driven, that type of
Mm-hmm.
personality, sometimes, and in my own experience, I'll just speak to that. I found that I was so much in that I was like kind of trying to take God's place.
Ah.
And so And so in this healing journey, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm not actually relying on your will to take me to the next step. And that was the next place that I got to go.
Mm.
And I'm actually getting like Holy Spirit chills right now as I talk
Mm.
about this because because I really owe it to the Holy Spirit. So
Yeah.
so coming into really another level of connection with Holy Spirit and saying, okay, like I really don't have everything figured out. And I like and really and really coming to forth with that information and asking him, okay, I really want your guidance. Like I'm putting it all out there as a business owner, as a working parent, as a mom that's trying to figure this thing out. I just want to know what I'm supposed to be doing. And so, for any of your listeners out there trying to find their purpose and find their identity after having kids, you get to look there. You get to look there. I can help you with a lot of other things, but that's first step is you gotta go to the Holy Spirit and ask for that guidance, and it will be shown to you. But it's through that process of surrender that I found complete and utter breakthrough over postpartum depression,
Mm-hmm.
grief after a family suicide,
Mm.
and my own issues after a huge job loss. And that's where it all kind of all came together and literally broke free, like literally kind of like an angel taking me off of those memories of birthing trauma. I had big birthing trauma after my second daughter. And literally after 4.5 years of PTSD, I broke through it.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so it was a really remarkable spiritual journey that I just love to share because it just shows the power of God when you lean in.
Now I know what that looked like for me. I know like steps wise what I had to go through in order to even realize that surrender was what I needed to do, and then also what I had to do to kind of like make that happen in my life. For me, it required a complete sabbatical from the podcast and ministry for 6 months so that I could realign. No, not I. So God could realign my priorities and help me to understand better who He created me to be and who I am.
Yeah.
What does it look like for someone's like, okay, yeah, obviously things are not aligned in my life, and I see what you're saying about surrender. Where's the first step? How do I even start to do that? And it sounds good, but I don't even know where to start.
Just start praying. Like you have to start talking to God. Like that's step number one, right? And praying not for what you think is needed, praying in such a way, because language is everything, right? And so praying in such a way that you're just really surrendering it all up and just really asking him to guide you. So when I started to release, praying with an outcome, praying with my own agenda, praying with that controlling piece, right? Like, God, give me a new client today, whatever it was, like when I stopped doing that stuff, then things started to roll. Things started to open up and I would start to see, okay, like this makes sense, or this opportunity came my way, or I started to release and forgive things that were holding me up internally in my mindset.
Yeah. I love that. The idea of not praying what you wanted. Because a lot of times that is what we do when we pray. It's like, Lord, please help this happen today, or please bring this to fruition. Instead, you're kind of approaching prayer with open hands. Lord, show me what you want to have happen. And that can be difficult. Some people really love that because they're like, I don't really want to have control. So here, you can have it. I don't want it.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like to be a person like that, but
me neither. I didn't either for a long, long time. And now I'm practicing it. I dedicate over an hour every day to this practice of really just getting into prayer in that way. And it's just remarkable, but it takes practice. So if it's not comfortable to you, if that's not your personality, you're going to have to work at it. But I think God sees that we are trying, and God sees our intention behind it. And he'll talk to you through that. He'll walk you through it.
Yeah. And I love that. The reminder of it's practice. And
Mm-hmm.
that means that sometimes we're going to fail. In fact, I was just telling one of the girls that I disciple, she said, "Oh, I already failed." It was something that she wanted to do here at the new year. And she's like, "I already failed." And I said, "It's cool. Tomorrow's a new day. And
Yeah.
you can do it. You can practice again, walking towards this goal." And she came to me the next day and she's like, "I did it." And I was like, "Did what?" And
Yeah.
she's like, "I started again and it worked." And I'm like, "See, it's just because you failed today doesn't mean that you've completely lost your way, right? Tomorrow's
Yeah.
a new day and you can begin to continue to practice that surrendering." Now, one of the things that you hear in, I don't know, a lot of different aspects of our world today is holistic. There's like, holistic treatment and,
Mm-hmm.
holistic lifestyle. And,
Mm-hmm.
you and I have talked about what like holistic healing looks like, that it's
Yeah.
not just about, one portion, about the work portion or the family portion, but there's work, there's family, there's spiritual. What does it look? What are your encouragements for moms that are feeling like, I got to do something because this isn't
Yeah.
working, whatever this is? What does it look like to find balance throughout the whole of their life? And
Mm-hmm.
then hopefully through finding that balance, also finding some holistic healing within themselves.
Well, it starts number one, getting rid of the word balance.
Ha,
Because
okay.
I really don't think balance exists in
Okay.
working parenthood. It's integration, right? Because there are
Mm-hmm.
days, we're always, well, I want to find the balance. What are you, a waiter and you're balancing like, you know, trays of plates or something? That's what I
Yeah.
think of a balance. Like we're not balancing. We're going through life and we're integrating. And so we're
Mm,
integrating. And some days you'll have more as a parent, you'll have more time with your kids some days, and other days you might be traveling and doing a lot of things for work or working. Like this weekend I'm going to be working around the clock probably a little bit in integrating time with my family.
mm,
Why? Because it was what life requires right now. But I'm not looking for balance because
mm.
that would mean that I would be sleeping the same amount of hours, playing with my kids the same amount of hours, and doing work the same amount. And there's just, you can't, right? So
Yeah.
you have to learn how to integrate, and you have to be prepared to change. You have
Mm.
to be prepared to really be flexible and nimble and go with the flow more. When I was really rigid as a first time mom, right, coming from
Yeah.
like, I'm doing this, I'm in corporate sales, I was doing all the things, I was working my way up and doing well doing that. And I just got into a rhythm of what worked. And then all of a sudden, this thing called motherhood hit me like a bus. And I was like, oh, hospitalized with the first baby on bed rest for several
Oh,
months as a newly promoted sales manager. Like all the things hit at first. And then we went through all this other stuff. And it was like, this is what that season, now I can look back. Now this is 7 years later, right?
yeah.
Perfect number. Looking
Oh,
back, I was like, yeah, looking back, it was like, oh my gosh, got it. This was teaching me to stop like going down just one little silo and trying to operate one little way for success.
mm-hmm.
Success actually looks like, we always see those posters with the success and the spaghetti is all over the place, right?
Yes.
Because that's really what success is. It,
Uh-huh.
it takes different forms and you have to be flexible. So I think
Hmm.
that's, I think that's, I think that's important. And then the other thing I would say, the first step, and I have a whole like 5 steps to overcoming burnout, but the first step of that is giving yourself permission to feel. Giving
Hmm.
yourself permission to feel, not going through the day like a robot, not trying to just avoid feelings, but just really experiencing motherhood. God
Yeah.
has blessed us with children. It's a blessing.
Yeah.
It is a blessing, guys. It is a blessing.
It's a harder blessing than others, but it is a blessing. Yes.
It's such a blessing. Yeah. But no, seriously, like really, really getting into the present moment. And so, but in
Mm.
order to do that, we always talk about the holistic stuff, right? If we're going to be holistic, we're going to be present and all the things. Well, in order to do that, you have to give yourself permission to feel.
Wow.
And so if you have any blocks to doing that, then we get to figure out what that is and unblock that so that you can actually experience what God has in store for you.
Because you can't really heal until you can feel. Because you don't know
Exactly.
what you need to heal from until you can feel that pain or that grief or whatever it is. And then you can identify, oh, that's what I've been stuffing down
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
so long. Uh, now, that is those 5 steps. That's on
Mhm.
your webpage, like right there on your homepage, right?
Yeah, I think so. There's a training there that you can watch. It's certainly in my video, but the 5 steps are really give yourself permission to feel, stop people pleasing, stop trying to make everybody happy.
Guys, she's
And
like got my number today. I'm like, okay, gonna write this down.
I know, I know. And then, I call it the leading mother mindset reboot. It's like the secret weapon. And this is what I use to really break through things. And it's, become aware of where your anxiety sources are,
Mm,
right? We all have them. You get to figure out what yours are. Could be in the present moment. It could be things from your past that are just holding you up. You got to learn how to really set intention, which helps you set your boundaries. You
mm,
can't, everybody talks about how to set boundaries. Well, you can't set boundaries until you have intention.
mm,
So you get to know where you want to go, what you want to do, what do you want to create as a working parent, and then you get to be really step into committed action and being courageous. And that's
mm.
that's the mindset reboot, and that helps us all step into our worth, which is step number 4. And when we're operating in our self-worth, then we can go to step 5, which is really get community around you, invest in mentoring, invest in community of other people of like minds that
Mm.
you gel with, because you need to have that. You cannot lone wolf motherhood.
No,
Yeah.
no. Yeah. And obviously here on our podcast, we talk about that's part of the reason why discipleship is so important is because we scripturally, God never said you need to be doing this on your own, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Bible does not say that anywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
we found out during COVID that being alone for a long extended amount of time is not what we were like made to do.
Yeah.
And I love that COVID did that. It confirmed who God created us to be, which is in community. And so I feel like in fact, I was just talking to our college students about this. Some of them said, yeah, I need to make sure that I'm being more intentional with spending time with my community.
Yeah.
And my husband and I piped up, we're like, do it now. Like, get used to making sure that you've got that community around you because it doesn't get any easier once you become a parent. Because
Mm-hmm.
then you've got your kids and you're so focused on that and maybe your job that it goes
Yeah.
2 months down the road and you go, I haven't seen any of my friends,
Right.
because I'm so
Right.
focused. And then you're like, why do I feel like I'm so, pulled in so many directions? Well, I haven't taken any time to really just relax, spend time
Yeah.
with my community and just have fun and be me. Instead, I'm
Yeah.
constantly in one of those roles that requires me to do instead of
Yeah.
just, relaxing and being me.
BBB. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
BBB.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so you have a new book coming out called
I do.
Leading Motherhood. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know that you and I have talked about the publishing process and, how it's sometimes there's a lot to it. And so congratulations on getting that book out into the world and it's coming out. Did you say like sometime February-ish?
Yes. Once we get through that final publishing phase.
Which is a waiting game.
Yeah, that is but I do have the proof, so it's right here.
Yay.
Yeah, I do have the proof leading motherhood, and it's part workbook and part story. So I talk
Okay.
about the myths of motherhood, everything from postpartum depression, birthing trauma, to workplace discrimination, to just transitioning right in your own marriage, because that's a big adjustment. Like there's
Yeah.
a ton of life adjustments that go into becoming a parent. And it flows into really helping women in this workbook step into their next level of leadership and vision for themselves. I
Mm.
think we do a great job of teaching women like how to care for the baby. Nobody teaches women really how to care for themselves. And it comes down to stepping into, hey, you get to dream a little bit. And in this workbook, you're going to be
Mm.
able to actually figure out what do you really want? like, what kind of life do you want as a mom? Because it does change. So you get to really figure that out. And you get to
Yeah.
be really authentic with yourselves and just dream, right? Without
Mm,
limitation.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that's important to be given that permission because we almost have to be given that permission because it feels like irresponsible or it's not the time for that.
Yeah.
And for you to say, no, you should do this because if you don't, then once again, time passes and you're like, I don't even know, like, what are you? What do you do? And you're like, I'm a mom. Okay,
Yes.
what do you like to do? I don't know because all I ever am is a mom, or all I ever am is
Yeah.
a mom and an employee, and that's all I know how to do. I'm
Mhm.
not finding that time for self care or enjoyment or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
what is you're talking about work or leading motherhood.
Mhm.
In that book, who is this book for? Is it for just working moms, or is it for all moms in general?
It's for moms at all stages. It's for moms that really want to step into their next level, right?
Mm,
Where they feel like they really want to go to a new experience or to a new level of themselves, or people they want to create something new in their life.
mm-hmm.
Something is usually probably not working. And you could be a stay-at-home mom, you could be a working mom, either way. It is definitely written towards moms that are ambitious and career driven and want
Okay.
to create huge impact in this life,
Mm-hmm.
and so if you're not a mom that wants to do that, then this may or may not be the book for you. But if you are a mom who's like, nah, I know I'm given this one light, like God lit me up for a purpose and for impact, and I'm not going to let that experience go away. I just want to be able to have a 10 out of 10 in personal life and career. And
Mm.
I want to figure out how to do it without driving myself completely nuts. Then this is the book for you, because this is going to be a way that you can work through these things yourself. And a lot of these
Mm.
things I do in my own coaching programs, but I wanted to bring this to the public as well so that you could work through these things on your own time if that's what you desire to do.
I love that. Now I'm going to ask
Yeah.
you a more general question. We've kind of more talked specifically, but this
Yeah.
is one that because you speak to moms, maybe you hear, and I want to know just as kind of like a closing bit of advice for our listeners. What does it look like to find joy in the midst of one of the hardest jobs in the world, and that's being a mom? How do we find joy when what we're talking about today is that it is really hard and there is
Yeah.
sorrow and there is grief. How do we
Mhm.
find joy in the midst of our motherhood?
Yeah. Recognizing the blessings in all the hard times.
Mm.
There is purpose in pain. And I've been through a lot of different painful moments over the last 8 years,
Mm-hmm.
a lot. And I can tell you, when I looked back and I started to realize I'm not a victim. Those were
Mm.
not moments for me to be a victim. And I definitely felt that way for a while, trust me.
Mm.
But when I started to really unpack, I even have people do this. So if you have painful moments right now, if you're going through some trials right now, make a list. I want you to write pen to paper, not type, pen to paper, write them down. I want you to write a list of them. Just let it all out. The next column over, I want you to write and really look at that painful moment or challenge or circumstance, whatever you want to call it, and look at the blessing that you have received from it. What
Mm.
happened in your life? What did you learn from that particular moment? And when you start looking at that, you realize how rich and how like abundant God is really in your life, because he's creating these moments for you to experience. He is not interested in our comfort. He
Hmm.
really isn't. He's
Yeah.
here to give us an experience to better our souls.
Yeah. Ooh, God is not interested in our comfort. I mean, American mindset says that's what we're all headed towards, right? That's what we're working towards is like
Right.
ultimate comfort and success so that the hardships go away. But
Yeah.
scripturally, that's not what's promised to us. Book of John
Yeah.
says, when the trials come, because they will come.
Yes.
And I love that you're kind of giving us a better way to look at those trials when they
Yeah.
arrive. I know sometimes I do that, but not until like 7 or 8 years later. So
Me
yours,
neither, you know,
yeah.
yeah, because society tells you not, oh, pain, stay away from that, right? We're in fight or flight mode. Our bodies tell us, stay away from that. But actually, God wants you to lean into this is look at what I'm doing. Look at what I'm actually providing you. He's teaching you something,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
So
And
don't
sometimes
wait.
we have to give up something.
So don't wait 7 or 8 years to
Yeah, don't wait 7 or
to
8
look at
years.
the purpose. Because if he's calling you to give up something,
Yeah.
you know, you could go through a lot more pain if you wait 7 years to look back and say, God, what are you trying to show me and ask me?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Mm.
completely. You know, and
Well,
it just wasn't aligned for you, and that's okay. You
mm,
know, you're getting so in those moments I think we learn alignment, and that's what everyone always asks me. They want to find balance, they want to find fulfillment in their purpose. It's right there. Just look into what the lesson is.
mm. God's always showing us. The question is, are we listening?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, where can listeners find more information about you and pre-order Leading Motherhood?
Yeah. So all the pre-order things will be available very soon, but you can just go right to my website, which is Amy Lee. It's Amy, AMYLEIGH, Looper.com.
Awesome. And there you can, I know you can also sign up for your 5 steps to receive that, and lots of opportunities for information to kind of further study on, this idea of motherhood. Well, Amy, we have one final question that we ask everyone, and that is because we're not meant to live life alone. Who is it that has helped you along on your journey?
Mm. Well, first and foremost, Holy Spirit for sure.
Mm.
And beyond that, really have to credit, my husband's been with me during this whole journey. We've had our ups and downs, but no matter what, it's that commitment. My kids, my family, and then I've had really amazing mentors and coaches. Becoming an entrepreneur, I really started to invest in myself, and the more I invested in myself, the more I was able to take out off the shelves that were just holding me back into really what I really was truly designed for, which was to write this book. So
Yeah.
through those things, it was really pivotal to work with people. Tara Oldridge is one. She's a coach of mine, and she's also leading a whole Christian leadership academy called Lighthouse. And that was an amazing experience to coach in. I got to coach people there. So yeah, hats off to all of those people in my life that have really been pivotal in my journey into surrender.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for everything that you shared. I love your perspective on, working motherhood for sure, but even just motherhood in general, and the idea of, even though it seems like a role where we need to be going and we need to be achieving and we need to be doing all the time, you are actually suggesting that we rest, that we approach it with open hands, that we surrender more than getting that list done every day. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Courtney, for having me. Have a good one.